She raises the issue of Syrian resettlement. Let me just say that that is premature.
When Labour Foreign Secretary David Lammy was asked whether the government would pause Syrian asylum claims, he said it would be premature to make such a decision. He was precisely asked that the asylum claims could come from people who were aligned with Bashar al-Assad and were involved in human rights violations. However, he stood by his decision, saying that pausing asylum claims would mean punishing those who actually needed help. It turned out that the Labour Party had not decided on a coherent action plan, and everyone had their own opinion. That's why, hours later, the Home Secretary rushed to the House of Commons and said something that was a direct U-turn. So, what did she say, and what does it reveal about the internal divide in the Labour Party? In this video, let's find out.
And in view of the situation in Syria, I'd like to ask the Foreign Secretary what the government's assessment is of the implications for the Syrian resettlement programme, and can he confirm that despite Assad fleeing to Russia to claim asylum, there'll be no asylum claims from former members of the Assad regime in this country, many of whom will be associated with human rights abuses?
She raises the issue of Syrian resettlement. Let me just say that that is premature. This House, in a cross-party basis, and she indeed saw this in her own role previously in government, has sought to support the humanitarian needs of Syrians. We recognise the displacement next door in Lebanon, in Jordan, in Turkey, and in Iraq and neighbouring countries, and of course we will continue to support people in those refugee camps and through the humanitarian aid that we support in country.
Priti Patel, the Conservative Shadow Foreign Secretary, questioned David Lammy about what the government was thinking about the Syrian asylum seekers. She knew that by then the Labour Party was confused on what stance to take. She asked whether the UK would allow asylum claims from former Assad regime members who were likely tied to human rights abuses. Her deliberate framing showed the potential acceptance of such individuals as a direct challenge to the UK's moral and ethical principles. By doing so, she forces Lammy into a position where he must address the uncomfortable tension between the UK's humanitarian commitments and the potential risks associated with granting asylum to controversial figures. Lammy, however, sidestepped Patel's direct question with a diplomatic response, saying pausing asylum claims was premature. However, he did not know he was trapped. Tensions could be sensed in the Labour MPs present there until the moment when the Home Secretary came and did precisely what Lammy called premature.
As the Foreign Secretary told the House, we welcome the fall of the Assad regime. I have taken the decision to temporarily pause decisions on Syrian asylum claims. All 5 Calais Group countries have taken the same decision. We will, of course, continue to keep all guidance relating to these asylum claims under constant review, and we will keep the House updated in the normal way.
After this, everyone could sense the internal divide in the Labour Party. The Foreign Secretary was kept in the dark about what policy to take about the immigrants from Syria. On this, Lammy appeared blindsided, openly admitting that the decision to suspend claims had not been put to him. This surprising disclosure highlighted a clear lack of coordination between the Foreign Office and the Home Office, led by Yvette Cooper.
We know that the situation in Syria is moving extremely fast after the fall of the Assad regime. We have seen some people returning to Syria, but we also have a very fast-moving situation that we need to closely monitor. And that is why, like Germany, like France and like other countries, we have paused asylum decisions on cases from Syria while the Home Office reviews and monitors the current situation.
Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive videos on the groundbreaking changes happening in British politics. Let's continue now. However, critics believe that the Labour's policing of pausing asylum claims from Syria means nothing. In other words, despite displaying this policy, asylum seekers in small boats from Syria would continue to enter the UK. It's highly unlikely that the UK would first ensure how many people in the small boats are Syrian, and then they will be sent back, while those from other countries will be accepted.
So Yvette Cooper announced yesterday that there's going to be a pause on asylum claims from Syrians. I just want to examine what that actually means, because people might be imagining that what it means is the UK is not going to accept any more Syrians coming over seeking refuge. That's completely untrue. Because if you think about it, it's not as if as the boats come over carrying, as they sometimes do, Syrians, we're going to be turning back any boats, are we? Because we don't do that. So Syrians can continue to come over. And meanwhile, it's not as if we're going to be deporting any Syrians who are already in this country claiming asylum. So what does this actually add up to? It adds up to absolutely nothing.
Right.
All we're saying is we're going to take even longer to eventually approve the claims, because on no planet is someone who's currently claiming asylum in the UK because they were persecuted by the Assad regime going to suddenly say, well, actually, there's a new bunch of terrorists in charge over there and I prefer them. And so I'm just going to, I'm going to go back.
Right.
And the lawyers here are not going to say this new bunch of terrorists who we're actually prescribe as a group are way better than the Bashar Assad regime. So these people can definitely go back. So it just doesn't add up.
Therefore, it turns out that the Labour Party is actually trying to show that asylum seekers from Syria won't enter the UK. However, this is a lie, and asylum seekers would continue to come to the UK. That's because the policy of sending those Syrians back, who have come to the shore, to a region in chaos, is totally illogical. This sits quite well with the Labour's long-standing pro-refugee narrative. On one side, Lamy's stance reflects a traditional humanitarian approach, warning against premature conclusions about Syria's safety. On the other, Cooper's position appears more reactionary, shaped by public concerns over immigration and security. And in reality, asylum seekers are coming to the UK, which can cause problems in the country.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about open borders. He was the one campaigning for free movement. I was in this House asking for a lift on skilled migration. He was there supporting all of the people who should not have been in this country. He wanted us to relax immigration. But as he's so keen to talk about the past, let's look at his record. 4 years ago, the Prime Minister signed a letter demanding that foreign criminals be allowed to stay in Britain. Dozens of Labour and Liberal Democrat MPs repeatedly signed these letters insisting that rapists and murderers be allowed to stay here. One of those criminals, Ernesto Elliott, had 17 convictions, including for knife crime. After his deportation was blocked, Elliott went on to murder someone. He was able to stay here and murder because people like this man campaigned against deporting criminals.
In the same way, asylum seekers from Syria can commit serious crimes in the UK. The policy shift becomes even more pronounced when examining Labour's evolving rhetoric around Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, the group now controlling Syria. Cabinet Minister Pat McFadden initially suggested reconsidering HTS's designation as an insurgent organisation, citing its leader's break from the main insurgent organisation and pledges to respect minority rights. However, to balance and to show that Labour is not too eager, Prime Minister Keir Starmer quickly dismissed this possibility, asserting it was far too early to consider any changes. Accompanied by the recent decision to not allow asylum seekers from Syria to enter the UK, it turns out the Labour Party is trying to change its very core. That's because historically, the party has championed the rights of refugees, emphasising compassion and international responsibility. Yet, by halting claims, Labour aligns itself with the Conservative-led government's restrictive approach. This decision mirrors actions taken by European nations like Germany and Austria, casting Labour as reactionary rather than progressive. The move risks alienating key constituencies, including refugee advocates and progressive voters, who expect the party to uphold its humanitarian commitments. As for David Lammy, who stands alone in the opinion of allowing asylum seekers from Syria to enter the UK, he seems to be confused. Chances are that he was not brought on the same page of the party narrative and strategy of visibly banning asylum seekers from Syria, but secretly allowing that to happen. Therefore, whatever he said in the House of Commons was actually the party's sentiments and confusion.
Of course, the tremendous issues that exist on the ground and our concerns, quite rightly, about increased terrorism that might engulf a country where there are at the moment different sections, different communities, different minorities, different regions, not just, in fact, HDS has been read in the papers. And against that backdrop, of course, a COBRA has been stood up to fully understand these issues across government. It wouldn't be right to comment on intelligence matters at this time, but she will understand that government is active as she would expect us to be. And she's absolutely right about the threat, not just of terrorism, but of illicit drugs as well. And having just come back from the region, she, I'm sure, will have heard Gulf allies raise the issue of Captagon and illegal drugs that also propped up Assad's regime and found their ways flooding into Gulf countries, and that's something, of course, that we continue to monitor. None of us want to see Syria become like Libya next door. Fractured and vulnerable to different terrorist groups potentially, and we will do all we can. That is why I spoke to the UN envoy.
Despite acknowledging the challenges that might come with Syrian asylum seekers, now we know that the Labour Party will allow them to enter the UK. However, on paper, the policy is to pause the asylum claims.
I think Labour's New Year's resolution is to turn every single hotel in Britain into a... Don't look at that as a boatload of people. Start looking at it in terms of hotel numbers. So every boat now has about 65 illegal immigrants on it. So if we take the Maidenhead Holiday Inn, for example, which is now a migrant hotel, apparently that has 350 rooms. So roughly every 5 boats that cross the channel is another hotel. Look at it like that. Every 4 or 5 boats coming across the channel is another migrant hotel somewhere in the country. 450 illegals came across the channel on Christmas Day. I mean, I've got the latest figures for you here, courtesy of our Home and Security editor, Mark White. There's been a 25% increase in channel crossings since last year. We're up to 37,000 for the year, 20,000 since Labour came to power. Home Office Minister Dame Angela Eagle claims that there are 220 hotels now in use. I actually suspect that number is much higher than that. 14 have opened since the election. So like this one in Altrincham in Greater Manchester, where several hundred Middle Eastern men have just, called it.
What do you think? Was it a sound decision by the Labour Party to pause asylum claims, doing exactly what the Labour Foreign Secretary called premature? Do you feel the Labour Party has an internal divide on this issue? In the comments section right below, share your thoughts on Labour's hypocrisy of pausing asylum now, but advocating to even allow criminals to stay in the UK when Labour was in opposition. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to get more updates on British politics and how events are changing it. Until the next video, stay tuned.